Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Moen After Dark here on the College Football Mafia Network. I am, of course, your host, Moen, joined by my co-host, Rock and Rant. How are you doing tonight, Rock?
I'm doing good, man. It seems like you're being a soldier and going through like a true mafioso with the show, despite your voice and being under the weather. So,
Yeah, I think I probably ought to go get a COVID test kit, but we'll wait until see if this doesn't clear up on its own. Well, the Heisman Trophy ceremony was yesterday. The Army-Navy game was yesterday. Big transfer portal moves today. Uh, Although there wasn't a lot of in-game action this week in college football, there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Uh,
absolutely.
so what? Let's just go ahead and start with it, and then we'll roll into the introductions. First topic: Heisman Trophy. Travis Hunter from Colorado won the Heisman Trophy yesterday. The first player to play a number of defensive snaps since Charles Woodson and win the Heisman Trophy. Did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? What do you think?
Look, I was expected, right? So I personally would have gone with Gentry in terms of the impact for the season, but I have no problem with Travis getting it. Like, I know he wasn't number one in anything, but he's not just one of those guys like a jack of all trades. Like, he could be drafted in the first 5 draft choices, wide receiver or cornerback if they do it. So to downplay him, I think is also unfair. My only issue with it relatively is is Cam Ward getting less votes than Dillon Gabriel. I don't want to hear it's about wins because that had nothing to do with LSU quarterback getting it, right? It was the same kind of win situation.
Yep.
So yeah, I always come armed so people can come with whatever. But like I'll just say, shout out last year. And this on a stats basis, it's not close, right? It's for that level, and it doesn't make any sense with the Davey O'Brien Award either. But I thought the ceremony was great. It's like actually the first time I've watched it through in a while, just because I had a vested interest in it. I thought it was fairly well done, though I have nothing to compare it to over the last several years because I just really haven't watched. But no surprise. How about you? Were you like surprised? Is it what you expected?
I wasn't shocked. That's what I was expecting. That's who I think deserved it. I know a lot of people. I know Pickles. He'll probably come on here tomorrow and tell you why he didn't deserve it. But even if he'd went Ashton Jeanty, I wouldn't be complaining. I think they were that close, neck and neck. I think it was a good pick either way you went with it. So, but congratulations to Travis Hunter. He's probably going to be number one pick.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's going to be the number one pick. I think he'll be number one on a lot of draft boards because depending upon how Tankathon goes, right now the two teams in 1 and 2 slot are quarterback needy guys, and there's theoretically from a lot of early draft boards only 2 players that fit that top 10 bill with the Raiders and the Giants right now. So I think it's likely to be where quarterback usurps who's actually ranked at the top of everybody's draft boards that's not looking for a quarterback. If I already guessed with Shedeur and Cam Ward and the Raiders and Giants in some order, but we shall see. We still got a bunch of games of the NFL to go through.
Absolutely. Somebody might be looking to trade up too. Don't be surprised if someone trades back for draft capital. Because there's a lot of problems on the Giants and Raiders. It's not just a quarterback issue. Let's say hello to some people that came in here early. Ryan Willie was here early. He says, go with my 32-team plan so the ACC and Big 12 stop crying about it. I know it won't happen, but it's something. You're right. It won't happen.
And it really shouldn't happen either, right? If they were going to do something like that, they would have to call the herd. You should, and it's a good reminder, you should go, if you're a member, if you're not a member, become a member. And if you are a member, you should go look at Utes video a week or so ago on the Big 12 TV ratings, and then the newest one, which he dropped yesterday, on the ACC ratings. And there's like clear tiers of if you wanted to have a conference that had some more power, it will never approach, at least in the current zone, what the Big 10 or SEC have. But 32 is probably not the way to go to close the gap. You'd have, what would you call them? A lot of milkers there.
Lots of milkers. By the way, the latest episode of Wild Ute University, we were leaving that free for everybody. That's our Christmas gift to you. Gives you a good breakdown of how the ACC stacked up in viewership numbers this year. I wasn't surprised very much. Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and I believe Georgia Tech were the top 4.
Yeah, Georgia Tech is actually ahead of Florida State. I don't know. They don't have as many games actually Nielsen rated, and they have a little bit like at some point, when you've got downtime, I've already asked them to do some statistical analysis, and not to diminish Georgia Tech because they are actually, a really good team and has some great games. But they had the benefit of having the opening game, right, which skewed everybody because we're all watching it, and then they had the Georgia game. So, like, what would be their views on the other games, or is it all loaded into those two, and probably a little bit of the Miami game too, because I know what those ratings were. But yeah, they definitely made a big leap, and I don't think they're coming down anytime soon, based off of what their head coach is doing and the quality behind there and some of the things they're doing in the portal, despite losing their best wide receiver.
Stephen Vitt says, how's everyone doing tonight? Good to see you, Stephen. Nathan Campbell's in the house. Good to see you, Nathan. Our friend Bob Swanger here. He's a member. Says hello.
Hello,
Good to
Bob.
see you. Our draw is here. In order to be the best in football, you have to be the best at your position. Hunter is good at both positions, but not the best at either. Pickles will tell you this tomorrow, I'm sure. It's for the most outstanding player. It doesn't say position. Outstanding.
It doesn't say MVP, and it does not say MVP, right? Because that would also be different. You can make an argument that, like, Oregon with Dillon Gabriel was 11-1 last year and 12-0 this year, right?
Yeah.
Cam Ward with Miami is probably more valuable to his team. I don't even know if Travis would be more valuable to his team than Ashton Jeanty would be, because I don't think we're having the same conversation without him. But that's not what it is. And a baseball analogy would be good. Getting sometimes the MVP is neither the leader in batting average, fielding percentage, hits, home runs, or RBI, but they're all in. They're the MVP. So it just depends upon how you're looking at it.
Nathan Campbell says, I think number Cam B. I think he's saying number one, Cam. Argraw says, why not Tyler Warren? You could make an argument for Tyler Warren. I don't disagree with you. Another guy that's a renaissance man, plays so many positions on the field. Hello, guys. Rock and Rant. We coming to Florida. Will you be at the game?
I will not be at the game, but Stormy, you should, if you're on Twitter or on Discord or either or, message me, because I'm sure that we can connect you if you guys are willing to go into the enemy territory with Flo and team, who will be there, and would probably be very happy to have some of you guys come by and take advantage of the locals doing a tailgate, since it's easier for them to set it up. So definitely hit me up. Any of the Cyclones guys who are going down and you want to hang out with some cool people, let me know. I can make those connections.
Nathan Campbell says both schools, this is Texas Tech and Houston, have hired offensive coordinator and defensive coordinators, and they picked up players in the transfer portal. After those tires, when are the players for the A&M quarterback? I don't think either one of them are I think Wegman was a 5-star coming out of high school? I don't think he's going to go to Houston or Texas Tech. You're on mute, Rock.
Sorry, there was a crystal ball for Connor Wegman, and it was like lower than you might think, but I can't remember who I saw, so I don't want to misquote. But if somebody in the chat can double check on 3, that's what I think I saw it. That there was I thought I saw, unless I'm just dreaming, because the flood is insane in the portal. But I thought there was some forecast of him maybe not going to what you might think.
Well, you're right. Connor Wegman is he took a visit to Houston, but I do not see a crystal ball for him as of yet.
Understood. That's what I missed. That's probably what I saw then.
But yeah, it looks like he's in the running. I don't know if he's committed yet. I'm going to see here on his profile. He did. He's going to Houston to play at Houston. That's kind of surprising, but
it's an interesting situation because as Nathan is talking about or alluding to, on the one hand, you're getting a fairly high profile quarterback, right? I don't think he's one of the top 3 or 4 in terms of like the money factor behind it. At the same time that you're losing a coordinator to Texas Tech and basically coming straight out saying he didn't have the money. So like, it might just be how they're choosing to allocate things, but losing a defensive coordinator that in theory you maybe didn't want to lose, while getting a quarterback that is probably, fairly expensive. And by fairly, I think that all of the top 10 quarterbacks are in the 7-figure and higher zone based off of what I know so far. Just an interesting dynamic right now.
Yeah, and if it's, that's probably close to where he played football in high school, he's getting to stay close to home. Good for him. I'm sure he got a bag of loot as well. Stormy Cyclone follows up and says, would love to hang out and talk football with a drinking hand. Hear, hear.
Well, just make sure you have some people to keep you safe, because that crew will definitely make your tailgate and the surrounding environments be an entertaining one. I can tell you that.
Larry the GM says LOL. I don't know what you're laughing at, Larry, but I'm glad I could bring a smile to your face today. All right, next topic, the Army-Navy game yesterday. There was a lot of scuttlebutt after last week that Army, being the AAC champion and only one loss to top-ranked Notre Dame, that Army should have got consideration to enter into the 12-team playoff. What did you think of the game yesterday?
It was disappointing. I actually thought we'd have a closer game. Last year's game was better when it was all said and done. Even taking into account longer seasons, I think it was still the most victories that the combined teams had going into that game, and in forever, if not at least years. But the pageantry is always awesome. I always love watching that game. The uniforms were on fire, which we talked about a few weeks ago when they were revealed. But I was surprised, honestly, that the game wasn't closer when it was all said and done. How about yourself?
Yeah, I watched through most of the third quarter. At that point, I knew Army wasn't going to come back, so I went ahead and flipped it off. But I was glad to see Navy win that one. For Pickles and Becky, go Huskies, contributors here on the CFB Mafia family of networks. And I was glad to see it because it resolves the question once and for all that Army did not belong in the 12-team playoff.
The most interesting thing to me afterwards, and I forget that there's been adjustments, because in my head I'm still in the zone that if you're in Army or Navy, unless you get some massive waiver, you're going to have to go. If you're going to any of the academies, that you're going to have to go into service before you can maybe come back and do football. I know there's been exceptions. I know, like in basketball years ago, David Robinson, and then they come back later. But the running back from Army, I believe, announced he's going into the transfer portal, which is the first one that I'm aware of. I don't know what the ramifications are in terms of like what he might owe having not completed his degree there, but I believe that was put out there yesterday.
Yeah, definitely one of those pageantry games like you brought up. Chris in the chat thought it was a snooze fest. We have Antoine Codes coming in here saying that game was great because Navy dominated. Yeah, I don't think I heard anybody pulling for Army. Everybody was pulling for Navy. So, but it was a great matchup. Nonetheless, let me go ahead and pull up this private message that you sent me on Twitter so I can show that to people. And I'll let you break this down, what these stats and figures are. Present, share screen. All right, so break this down for me here, and I'll make this a little bigger while you're breaking it down.
Yeah, so just I was just messing around with ChatGPT and AI and doing some searches, so there might be some errors there. And it's not so much that I really don't care ultimately whether the playoff is 12, 14, or 16. I can make an argument for all of them. But what I do think is interesting is when people make a lot of complaints about too many teams. So I just asked it to like go through all of the key sports across all of the different divisions from FBS, FCS, Division II, JUCO, NAIA, and specifically like look to see in football, but also a few other sports. And I went further down after this as well. What percentage of teams are involved in the playoff in all of the major sports? And even if you go down further and add women's volleyball, women's basketball, track and field, a few other sports, essentially, even if the playoff is adjusted to 16 teams in a year or two, it'll still be the lowest percentage of teams competing in a playoff in college sports, in the major sports, down to some of the more larger and minor ones of anything. Now you can make an argument about like the 4 and being really cut, but the freak out that it's getting too big, it just doesn't actually. It works well for everybody else. That was really only the point. Again, like I wasn't doing it because I wanted to say, oh, Miami should be in. Like I have no problem that Miami wasn't in the 12. They didn't deserve to be. My issue was the comparison against Alabama when that was being made, and I thought there was some arguments on both sides there. But I'm not like, woe is me. But it is interesting just to see like the percentage. Even if you go to 16 out of the 133, you're still like 12 point something. The next, major sport that people know about that is close to that is women's soccer in the Division I level, where there's like 400 teams because of Title IX, and just that's all where a lot of those spots come. And that tournament has like is up to like 14% of teams make it into the postseason playoffs. So just for the argument, because I know that there's, whether Josh Pate and others who are poo-pooing the expanded playoff, or people are going crazy about it going to 16, like relative to all college sports, it's actually still going to be the most restricted playoff, even if you go to 16, was kind of the curiosity I had, not the argument to defend or go against.
Yeah, it's an interesting statistic, especially when you start comparing it to the different sports and the different levels of sports that we have in the NCAA. So
yeah, like
I just wanted to kind of show that there.
Yeah,
I'm of the
FBS
belief that you need to cut it down still.
Yeah, I mean, but FBS is the exception and trying to recreate wheels, right? The only sport that I think actually has less teams in is JUCO, but I think there's only 54 teams, and relatively the percentage is higher.
Chrissy says, I watched because people said Army deserved a playoff spot. There was that argument last week. Navy was more physical. People were raving for Army QB. He sucks. I don't know how he became a QB. Army runs a triple option system. So if you don't like the triple option, you're probably not going to be a fan of Army.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't like vanilla ice cream, there's not a lot we can do for you on that one.
Stormy Cyclone says 16 would be great. No buys. Power 4 conference winners get top 4 seeds.
Yeah. And I don't even need that personally. Like, I don't know. To me, the playoff, wherever it lands, should be a sort of version of the basketball tournament. Like the difference being, we're not going to give all the conferences are not getting their champion and then seeded appropriately. So I'm not advocating that all whatever G4, G5, whatever the ultimate number is, plus the P4, that they all get a team in. That's not what I'm advocating for. But whoever, you figure out a system, whether it's the P4 plus 1, and you see them just the way they should be. And that's essentially, and there's no reseeding either, right? Like that's what happens in the hoops tournament. If 11 and 13 make it and one gets stuck playing 8, like so be it. But I don't think you have to guarantee the 4 conference winners the top 4 seeds. I think it's like you Frankenstein everyone's argument and come up with something in the middle. That's my take on it, at least.
There's over 130 teams. People like Josh Pate at Pate State Freights, who complain over the expansion sound ridiculous. This is what it always should have been. So our Graw is saying that he wants to stick with 12.
Yeah, I mean 12 to 16, whatever way. Like if you want to get rid of buys, you have to go to 16 or you have to go to 8, right? I mean, you can't do no buys at 12 or 14. It just doesn't. The math doesn't work. So you're either only doing 8 if you don't want to have buys, as some don't want to, or you have to do 16, 12, or 14 automatically mean either 2 or 4 are getting a bye.
Yeah. There's many different permutations, but the thing is, this is going to last for this one coming up. We have to see how this plays out. And obviously next year, they might make a reseeding change, but I don't think they're going to suddenly blow it up and go to 16 starting next year. So, but I would actually be in favor of going to an 8. 16 should be maximum. It will make room for Cinderella story. I think you could have a Cinderella story here in the 12 team.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, I am the last person who wants. I despise the SEC chants, but just to shut it up, because to me, I just think the deserving teams should get in. And if there's like 8 SEC teams in a given year, so be it. And if there's 1, so be it. Unlikely that last scenario happens. But just for that specific argument, I would love to wind up seeing the Big 12 and ACC teams, those 3 teams, Boise, and to a lesser degree, Big Ten, but at least Big Ten's been sitting on the sidelines relatively quiet because their teams were so highly ranked in this. I'd like to see some damage done to the narrative. If not, it's going to be brutal. But if a decent amount of damage is done, everyone's going to be talking about how, oh, maybe the people who were complaining about bias and hype, even if the SEC is still the best conference from top to bottom, had an argument.
Argros follows it up with, I just made a playoff with more than 4. That wasn't a playoff.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Conundrum comes in here and says, what a great year. Iowa over Gophers, Badgers, Corn Dogs, and Navy beats Army. But you all didn't beat Iowa State.
We all selectively remember what we want, right?
Yeah. Nathan Campbell reminds everybody, smash that like button, please. Why didn't they go to 8 after 4? 4 better than 8, 8 better than 12. Because this was a format that was discussed between Swarbrick, Bowlesby, and Greg Sankey. And Sankey obviously wanted to maximize the potential playoff slots for the SEC, knowing meanwhile that he was going to backdoor Oklahoma and Texas into the SEC out from under Bob Bowlesby.
Right. That's why the last week or so was just ridiculous, because Greg Sankey's acting like he has no idea how the playoffs team committee was going to do this, and the amount of teams, and that the Power Four, the P5 has greatly changed since they did this. No, it actually hasn't. He knew at the time that they agreed to this, he knew already that Texas and Oklahoma were coming. So he can't act like that did not happen. The sequence that he's trying to sell to you and that the propaganda side is lying. Like, fine, just like say you want your teams in, but don't gaslight us.
Yeah, it's what gets me is that he put the quote out there that the 12-team playoff was designed for five equitable conferences. Meanwhile, he was taking Texas and Oklahoma away from the Big 12. Even if the Pac-12 survived, how is the Big 12 an equitable conference when you don't have any? I mean, your biggest brand outside of that would be Kansas. Now we know Colorado with Deion Sanders there, but you certainly completely devalued and took away any equity the Big 12 had when you took Oklahoma and Texas. ASU, Boise, and Indiana wearing the glass slippers. Yeah, Indiana, that's going to be a good one. Kicking that off on Friday night, too. Friday night primetime. Argros says joke is on the SEC, Big Ten for the win. Yeah, see, when Sankey was developing that system, he didn't think the Big Ten was going to expand to 18 with 4 West Coast schools. So I don't know if he thought that maybe they would pick up Kansas and Iowa State and settle down or what, but obviously every action has an equal reaction. What if they don't have an argument? Will you admit it? The SEC dominated the 4-team era. Alabama dominated the 4-team era.
You weren't even in the SEC at the time it was being dominated. So, yes, but I'll admit facts. Like, facts are facts. What I'm not going to do is be gaslit about statistics that are used selectively from one team to another as if it's all being considered with good faith, right? And I'm not saying that about you, Larry, the GM, but just like broadly in the conversation. You can't sit there and talk about victories and ignore that at one school that isn't, in your conference didn't beat a school that another team also in your own conference lost to, and then try to dismiss that as it was too soon in the season, but later on it was a loss to a very strong and upcoming team. The inconsistency is my issue, not admitting facts.
Yes, and again, this SEC stuff, it's Alabama is the lion's share of those titles, and let's not forget they had the greatest coach in college football history, Nick Saban. That was pre-NIL era. We have seen parity. Suddenly, as soon as NIL passes, suddenly there's more parity in college football. I
even
wonder
in the
why.
SEC. Even in the SEC itself.
Conundrum says, Moen, y'all didn't beat Michigan. You're right, we didn't. It's a failure of a season. First one to admit it. I called for Ryan Day to be fired as a result of it. And I think it's pretty obvious Brian Hartline interviewed for the West Virginia job to let Ohio State know that he wants to be tabbed to pick up the head coaching reins should Ryan Day be fired after a playoff loss.
Do you think that that's even remotely possible that Ohio? I know he's a great recruiter, and I understand the wide receiver pipeline there, so I'm not dismissing that. But do you think Ohio State's going to take a first-time head coach in college, even if it's somebody from within the program like Hartline, and pull a Michigan?
Who are you going to get besides Ryan Day? That's a question. Who are you going to be able to get? There's only two. You're probably not going to get Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel wants an NFL job. He's going to get an NFL job. So that leaves two candidates out there. Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame has a relatively low buyout. It's $8 million. And the other option is Brian Hartline. There's just not a lot of great options, especially this late in the coaching carousel. It's not like you're going to lure Nick Saban out of retirement to come coach at Ohio State.
Right. Well, I mean, I would think Ohio State can pretty much buy out anybody they wanted to. Even it just depends upon if you're saying they have to be an quote unquote an Ohio State person.
They could. You're right. They could. But I think the boosters, if they were going to buy out somebody, they want an Ohio State alum. But Oregon could be looking for a new head coach too. There's rumors out there that if Landing wins it all, he wants an NFL gig. So.
And he
Oregon has certainly been killing it in the transfer portal this weekend. They are spending big money. If the Big Ten wins the CFP, the SEC reign is officially over after 2 years. Will Sankey face reality? Well, no. I mean, I'm not going to fault Sankey because Sankey's doing exactly what he's hired to do. He's hired to be an advocate for the Southeastern Conference. So I'm sure he'll have more excuses.
You can be an advocate. My issue isn't that he's an advocate. It's what he should be doing. It's what Jim Phillips has been horrible at doing. And even this year when he tried to do it was so bad you almost wish he didn't. There's just some aspects of how he does it that I have an issue with because they're just ingenuous as opposed to being very they're lying to people about how things went down. Right, not the spinning that the glass is half full on this team or that team versus a half full on another. That's just the way it is, and that's where opinions are going to come in about the eye test. But he's doing what he should be doing. It's like I'm crapping on him in one regard, but he's doing the job. And nothing I'm saying right now makes me think that the SEC is still not the best conference. I think it's just not as elite as it was. It's more spread and dispersed, but still better than all the other conferences from top to bottom.
Yeah, once NIL hit, I think that completely leveled the playing field. R. Gross says something the SEC fans leave out about those champions is the nosedive they took after winning. Look at Florida, Auburn, and LSU. They were dumpster fires after winning. It was Bama taking charge.
Yeah, it's hard to be a consistent winner. That's what, you can be anti-Alabama and Saban, but if you're being honest, they did a great job. They may have had advantages, but there's a lot of Texas A&M has been writing checks for a while and hasn't resulted in anything on the field.
Well, that's true. Very true, but Oregon is writing checks now, and they are taking advantage of it. Antoine Code says, could Brian Hartline be similar to Kenny Dillingham? What type of coach is Hartline? He is a player's coach. Wide receivers absolutely love him.
Yeah, Ryan Day did not get Ryan Day is not the reason why Jeremiah is in Ohio State and not running down in Coral Gables. It wasn't a Ryan Day beat Mario Cristobal thing. It was a Brian Hartline plus really good NIL beat Mario Cristobal and a really good NIL plus the winning tradition that Ohio State has had more recently.
It doesn't hurt when you look at the top wide receivers in the NFL, and most of them are Brian Hartline through that pipeline at Ohio State. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Terry McLaurin, and the list goes on and on. Jeremiah Smith, he's going to be up there. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be up there. Emeka Egbuka is going to be up there.
Moen, a quick question for you on that one. With as much as you can take your filtered glasses off from Ohio State, is his development good, or is he just really good at landing the excellent talent that then becomes excellent talent, right? Like Jeremiah was the best player in America heading on there. Like, is he also a great developer? Is he an excellent recruiter and a very good wide receiver?
Well, he's a great developer too. You got to remember, Jamison Williams left Ohio State because he couldn't get playing time because he was sitting behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. He went to Alabama and won a Heisman Trophy. So, I mean, the receivers that generally leave Ohio State because they can't get playing time are actually really good on the teams they go to. So, Julian Fleming being the exception to the rule there, I don't think he's played up nearly to his potential at Penn State. Is Hartline the type of coach to take OSU to another level? I don't know. But Ryan Day is 1-4 against Michigan, and he's lost 4 straight. So Illini Ted's in the house. Big pickup for Illini Ted. Luke Altmaier is returning to the fight in Illini next season. As the SEC went too hard at college basketball, they are looking really good in that sport, but was it too big of a cost to the football dominance?
I personally don't see it that way. I think that, in an alternate universe where NIL wasn't kicking in, maybe you'd be able to prove out that theory. But I think the biggest reason is that they're not being able to stack people 2 and 3 deep as much anymore because people want to play if they haven't gotten on the field after their first 2 years. So the good talent is dispersing more widely, and sometimes even within the conference. SEC is eating itself to some degree too. Used to be a thing in the old days that wasn't really able to happen.
Yeah, and I think it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, Arkansas, obviously they've tried. They have not matched the football success of what they've put together on the hardwood. So Kentucky, very similar.
I think an alternative version of that, and I don't know how to explain it, is the ACC has neither gone all in on football until this year, but somehow has like lost the road on basketball so far this year.
Yeah, very interesting quote. If you guys are on Twitter X, definitely look up Flug Empire on Twitter X. He has a great quote from one of the board of trustees from UNC that out and out mentions they wanted to get Belichick to get into the SEC. So they haven't filed a lawsuit against the ACC like Florida State and Clemson did, but you got one of your board of trustees out and out saying it. So that's not a great sign for the ACC. Georgia Tech, how about a report card on the coaching hires? I gave my report card on Friday, Stormy Cyclone. I don't know if you saw that, but I'll bring him up here and I'll let Rock give his thoughts on it. Let's start with Scott Frost at UCF.
D for dumb.
I agree. Barry Odom at Purdue.
Is there a meh grade? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
he's not going
to move a needle mover.
He's just going to be, like he's better. He's better than the other coach they had, right? But you need that plus X, right? To make a move on Purdue, especially in a world where you got like Cignetti coming from Indiana, who was like dominating in a different fashion before he came over. So I don't think it's a bad hire. I just don't think it like changes their stripes.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a Georgia Tech on that one just because my whistle is parched here, Stormy. So I can stay limber. What about Belichick at UNC? What did you think of that hire?
Optics A, on the field, I don't know, incomplete. I'm a C, but I could be wrong. It's either an F or an A when it's all said and done on the field. I get the hire. I get what it's doing. I think it's, there's a lot of other factors at it. I'd be skeptical of anybody coming into college after coaching the NFL for 40 years or whatever it was and not having coached college, even in this professionalization stage. But like, I could see it going either way, honestly. Like, I think it's 70% chance it doesn't work and 30% chance it works magically.
So if I asked you straight up, hope, there's hope at UNC, or it's all hype? You're going to lean more towards hype. Okay.
I'm going to say there's hope, but like I hope to what degree? They had a terrible season last year. They'll get more attention. they'll get to hang out with cooler people for a while, and then he'll either succeed on it or not.
I think just from the fact it puts butts in seats, it moves season tickets, NIL cash is pouring into North Carolina. I think that's an A+ hire.
Yeah, if you look at the TV, if you go to see what while you talked about the ACC, they it's a better hire the minute after you look at what while you wrote about.
Yes, because UNC and Virginia, I think Virginia was the worst. Virginia has some terrible ratings.
Terrible.
Virginia has G5. There's some G5 teams that beat Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia and SMU are gonna go on a date.
Well, SMU's in the playoffs. Virginia sitting.
I know, but like in terms of TV ratings outside of the playoff, they're basic. They have a lot of work to do, but at least they have a product on the field, and they can make up for that with just success. You got to start somewhere.
Well, Ted says you mentioned Dan Lanning possibly bolting to the NFL if he wins it all. I heard the same possibility. If that happened, do you think Oregon falls back, or does he have them set to stay elite? I think they would do exactly what Ohio State would do. I think they would promote from within. I think they would probably Willie Stein, their offensive coordinator. I think they would just promote him to head coach. And trust me, I mean, if you haven't been following Hayes Fawcett on Twitter, I know some people get a little mad that Hayes Fawcett puts out a lot of information and a lot of tweets. But Oregon's landed, I believe, 3 or 4 top prospects from the portal just this weekend. Number 1 safety in the class, number 2 cornerback in the class. So yeah, they're not hurting for any money there at the University of Oregon in Eugene.
Yeah, I mean, even if they win the national title, I wouldn't expect that Phil Knight's going to be like, cool, 1 was good enough. Check's closed.
Yes. He just wants to see 1 before he dies.
Didn't say he was down opposed to more than 1 before he dies.
It's a race against the Reaper. But he's a healthy man. Stormy Cyclone says SEC looks really good in basketball. They have several top-tier teams. Yeah.
I saw somebody post that they thought that now this is probably extreme, but maybe not really, that the SEC could get 11 or 12 teams into the tournament based off of rankings and ratings right now. They still got to beat each other up over the season though. So
well, see, interesting thing talking about Dan Lanning going to the NFL. Where do you think he would land if he went to the NFL? I think Jerry Jones would absolutely snap him up. Yeah,
there, or depending upon where OC from the Lions winds up, you could put the Bears in the mix there. I think he's probably too smart to go to the Jets, though Vrabel seemingly is interested. And the interesting, there's reports that Belichick before the NC thing went down, with a few reporters confirming it, at least like reached out to Mike Tannenbaum about that. So, which I thought would have been the day after hell froze over, but I guess he was desperate to find out if there was an NFL spot before going to UNC with that super expensive $1 million buyout to go back to the NFL.
Speaking of supplicants, what did you think of the Rich Rodriguez hire at West Virginia?
I mean, I don't think it's as, I call these all like the first wives of coaching club, where they're all going back. But I don't think it's as bad as a Scott Frost hire, ultimately, even though it's both the same thing. So I thought Scott Frost is a D. I'd put Rich Rod as like a B-ish hire to me.
That's what I feel. I put the hire at a B. I think as a coach, Rich Rodriguez is a B-level coach. But hiring him at West Virginia was an A+ move for them.
Yeah, I don't know who the other. I can't sit there and say you definitely should have hired Hartline over Rich Rod, because I don't. He's of that DNA. It's not like Scott Frost came from Orlando and everything like that. Like he's just going home because there's like no bars that will host him anywhere else.
Right. And again, Brian Hartline did interview, but I don't know if he really wanted the job or he was just taking a position to let the administration at Ohio State know he wanted to be a head coach.
Right.
Conundrum, Hawkeyes land SEC quarterback Hammer Hank Brown. I believe he was out of Auburn, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Well, we'll see. They haven't had a quarterback for several years now. Maybe they'll actually land one. but I think you're going to have to get Ferentz out the door first.
Yeah, I don't know if you
Campbell.
brought Jalen Milroe in. I don't know. I don't know if that's the issue at Iowa.
Yeah, it's the coaching. It's the coaching. It's the philosophy. It's Kirk Ferentz plays kind of football Kirk Ferentz loves. How fast does the ACC fall apart if UNC files a case? It's the All Carolina Conference for a reason.
And it's not any faster than it already isn't, right, in terms of lawsuits, because it's nothing, unless they're coming up with something completely different. It's not like those cases of the two cases with Clemson and Florida State have slowed to a crawl. If you didn't see the article earlier this week from USA Today with Florida State AD saying we never said we wanted to leave. Ultimately, like, I don't think anything matters ACC-wise until, whatever, today's the 15th, so we have theoretically 46 more days before ESPN has to do something. So between now and 46 days, we should hear something from AACC and ESPN, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's the thing that matters more than anything, to see what happens with that.
Yeah, definitely. But don't forget, they can also sign another extension. They can give ESPN more time to think about it. There's nothing that says ESPN has to put pen to paper by February 15th. The ACC can grant them another extension.
True.
And I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean,
why they wouldn't is if the theory that Jim Phillips didn't have a right to grant them an extension to begin with without a vote is accurate, which I believe it actually probably is more likely than not is accurate, but I don't know for sure. And it hasn't been adjudicated in court. But if he did go against the bylaws, which my reading of the bylaws, and I have read them, is he did, then I don't see how we can get away with it with all the sunshine that's out there right now on it.
Illini Ted says, landing with Caleb Williams at the helm is very tempting, but I still think the Bears open the checkbook for Lyons Johnson. They have to make a splash. I don't know if you're a Bears fan, Illini Ted, but that organization is a dumpster fire. He'll tell you he's a Jets fan. I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Joe Burrow's the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Doesn't have a team. Does not have a defense.
Yeah, it also depends. Like, look, most people rated Caleb Williams as a generational talent. I know some people don't necessarily like him for additional reasons that aren't necessarily about playing. But does Ben Lyons think of him, or would Ben Lyons? Does Ben from the Lions think of him that way, or would he rather go somewhere else where he gets a hand on picking a quarterback that he likes? Now, granted, he's done wonders with Jared Goff, for sure, but Jared Goff was still a first-round draft pick at the time, but hadn't exactly delivered quite the way that the Rams wanted to. But it's probably one of the best win-win trades I can ever remember in the NFL. Ultimately, depending upon how the Lions though they're losing tonight to the Bills at home. So it really depends upon what Johnson wants to do. Like, does he want to be tied to that quarterback and also have to marry the in-laws, which is the rest of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I watched that Tennessee game this week too, the Tennessee-Cincinnati game. Tennessee's got a quarterback problem themselves. Will Levis is not the answer. Not the answer. He threw 3 picks today, looked awful. I think this is his second full season. They're probably going to have to draft another quarterback. Tennessee's going to be drafting yet another quarterback. Conundrum confirms Hank Brown is the former Auburn quarterback. That's the gentleman who just went to Iowa. FF18 Buffs, who I believe is having a show with Nathan on Wednesday this week. Brock, if you watch Travis in person, you would have no doubt. Travis could play running back in the Mountain West and get that many yards. He was a .9999 recruit and kept up the greatness.
I don't have any doubt about Travis. I think he's going to be number one on draft board. I don't think he's going to be the number one draft pick because of needs, and quarterbacks get a premium despite where they are. They jump higher in drafts. But I have no doubt about him. It's more of, I could make an argument that Ashton Jeanty could have won it, should have won it, but I really could care less. Like, both of them were fine, and I don't really have a problem with either one of them winning it.
Yeah, I didn't watch the ceremony last night. I watched wrestling on NBC, but look, if I woke up this morning and checked Twitter and it said Ashton Jeanty had won the Heisman, I wouldn't. I think you could make a strong enough argument for both of them. So But
yeah, there are Marvel multiverses where Deion Sanders isn't the coach of Colorado and Travis does everything he did and Ashton wins, right? Like, that doesn't hurt for all the eyes to be on there. But I don't think he didn't earn it or deserve it either.
Stormy Cyclone asks, what is the latest on the House settlement? Funny enough, that is probably going to get passed, and that is probably they're going to get an antitrust exemption with the incoming administration and legislator. In addition to that, the NLRB, the pick for the NLRB was not approved. So the incoming administration will get to pick their own person for the National Labor Relations Board. So it does not look good for Dartmouth men's players in that regard either.
I will say I don't believe a single thing will get done until a single thing gets done, because it can't get passed by the Senate, where that's the momentum. If the House doesn't pass it, and the House is going to have like a 1-vote majority for about 4 months at a minimum because of appointments if they get approved. So it's going to happen soon. One other development that did happen is people who don't have direct feed in there. A bunch of walk-ons appealed to the court to stall the imposition of the scholarship limits, so it's not a crushing thing from like all these walk-ons having to lose their spots right away as they go down to 105 with the expectation of the implementation for the, and a lot of schools have, 110, 130, 150 people on their roster, with a lot of those being walk-ons, but they don't necessarily have the say is more like a friend of the court, please help us kind of thing.
We shall see, but I think it passes. I think they get that antitrust exemption. Stormy Cyclone chiming in with the $5 super chat. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you for the entertainment. Thank you for watching us, Stormy Cyclone.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate that. I apologize. My voice isn't up to its natural timbre. FF18 Buffs. Colorado is the favorite for the 2054 Heisman. Yeah, Heisman every 30 years. That's not bad. Most big time teams out there don't have any Heisman. So
yeah, and I always find it entertaining. The teams that have no Heismans or no national titles are the ones who will tend to take shots at people with multiple. You now have multiple.
Illini Ted says Altmaier had a list of portal requests that he met with Bielema about. He must have got the right answer in the bag. I figured it was coming, and both our backup QBs entered the portal last week. Good for Altmaier. I think he's a perfect QB for that system with Brett Bielema.
And as I know people get frustrated with the portal, and I understand that as well. But there was a report this week that don't cry too much, because over the last 4 years, coordinator salaries have gone up 25% in the sport. So they're all getting paid.
Thank you again for that super chat, Stormy Cyclone. We do appreciate it. Bringing that up, the portal situation. Wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought of Marshall pulling out of the Independence Bowl.
Yes, somewhere up here, the Marshall logo, I think it's in the corner, is upside down for a reason.
There you go.
It's hard to say, but it is there. I don't know what they're supposed to do when I know the problem, right? It's terrible that happened, and it's awesome that there was a quick fix with a fairly local school on short notice to come in and give Army an opponent, though it sucks because they're an 11-2 team now, playing a 5-7 team in a bowl, and they should have had a higher level champion. It all comes down to the challenge that the timing of bowls in the portal in this crazy zone versus the continuing part that they are technically all students, and the other rules about having to be enrolled for spring practice, and some schools start sooner in January. Some don't start till February. Some are on trimester systems, but that's the issue. So that's what, and if you usually have like a week or something like that after school starts to formally enroll, let alone the 12 schools and some of the later bowl games that get an additional 5 days to enter the portal, but they don't have to exit the portal right away. That's the challenge, right? So it sucks for Marshall because they had a good season. Their coach gets poached. They have 36 players in the transfer portal as a result, including 3 quarterbacks. Like, what are they supposed to do? Like, I don't know.
Yes. They had 11 leave after they pulled away from the bowl. It was 25 when they pulled away from the bowl. It is now 36. So 11 more players entered the portal once they pulled away from the bowl.
Yeah, and they probably knew that people were about to, because not everyone goes in the portal right away. So they must have had a sense that more were going to go. They probably figured out we don't have a quarterback that can do that. So it's terrible. It's terrible for Marshall, right? They could use that check. It's damaging for their reputation. And it's kind of weird. On the one hand, we have the Marshall situation, right, which is horrible and indicative of everything we all despise with this issue, which goes against the NCAA issue about like enrolling in school to be eligible for spring ball, which is half the point. And then on the flip side, we got, Shedeur Sanders and Travis and Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe leading an anti-charge, right, of staying and playing in the bowl games. And a lot of their teammates are staying. So you have, on the one hand, it's like really trickling down on one side. But last year, I think the equals of the Cam Wards and Travis and Shedeur Sanders would have possibly sat out. Now it's a little bit different with Shedeur because of his dad, but generally that trend was going on. So we're feasting and famining at the same time.
Yeah, I generally don't agree with Lane Kiffin on a lot of things, but I think he has the right idea. They should just allow an exemption for those student athletes to enroll a little later, and they should just start winter transfer portal after bowl season.
Yeah, I agree with that. They have to figure that out, and they have to put in things because remember, not everyone who's in the transfer portal to go to a new school is going to be in the NFL, right? The vast majority of them won't, so they do need to get their degrees. They're not just like doing it only for the check. There's thousands of kids in there. So they have to figure out how to make it work and make sure that those guys don't get caught up if they start a class 3 weeks late. That's the only issue. But the bigger issue is what we're seeing.
Yeah, they've got to come up with some solution, and I don't think it's going to stop kids from sitting out. I mean, if you're looking to be a top prospect in the portal, you're not going to risk an injury and a guaranteed payday to play in a bowl game, but I think it'll help a little bit at least. Nathan Campbell says, I think it's going to be bad because the stuff they've already picked up, they don't have the room with the NBA. Again, they're paying pennies on the dollar for that content, though.
Yeah.
Line Ted says, I've suffered with the McCaskies my whole life. Here's to you, brother. I've suffered with the Browns my whole life. That is the Brown family, not the team of the Browns.
Chicago has a particularly bad collection of owners over the last couple of decades, with rare exceptions.
Stormy Cyclone says, a little Fireball might help your throat, Mo. Good stuff. I don't have any Fireball. I stay away from Fireball now. Don't like that fire water. Let's take a little pull off the Crown Royal there. All right, guys. Illini Ted says, is the Big and SEC schedule alliance going to be a changing team, or can we just keep Mizzou as our every year game? We already have them scheduled 2026 and beyond. I can tell you what I've heard. Take it for what it's worth. It is going to be based off of the performance of the teams the previous season. So you are more than likely going to get like Ohio State is going to be playing Georgia, which Ohio State has 6 SEC teams scheduled in the next 12 years. They got a home and away with Texas, a home and away with Georgia, and a home and away with Alabama.
Yeah, it's like the NFL model in a way, just for that one
sort
game,
of.
right? You get like the third place schedule of a division kind of thing,
right?
But
because they want to try and get they're trying to get more money out of their TV partners, and the only way they're really going to accomplish that is giving them the best matchups possible. ESPN is not really putting out all that money there for Illinois versus Missouri, which I think is a great game. Don't get me wrong. It's a good rivalry game, neighboring rivals, but they want to see Ohio State play Alabama. They want to see Michigan play Georgia. They want to see Texas play Penn State. They want to see Oregon play Alabama. But we'll see. I heard that they were still working on it, still work in progress. So, but we know Sankey also came out and said that they're going to adjust their out of conference scheduling to make up for those 3 conference losses that Alabama suffered.
Which is the dumb. I hope they do that. I literally hope that they're so dumb to look at glass half full. I mean, half empty versus half full. and then find out later on that what happened is the only reason a 3-loss Alabama team got considered was because of their strength of schedule.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that they would have to. It's a bad look. I mean, you can go out and schedule 3 FCS teams and not play a 9th conference game. It's not gonna help you. Here's my thoughts on the top 2 picks this year can go to the New York Giants and Sanders to the Cowboys. I think he's talking about Cam Ward going to the Giants and Sanders going to the Cowboys. Cowboys got a lot of money wrapped up in Dak Prescott now.
Yes, they do. They do, and it's brutal because the damn Jets can't win games that they should, and they don't lose the games that they need to. And it's going to kill me if Cam Ward or Sanders go to the Giants and the Jets are like, I'll be sitting here praying that Travis Jordan, a Florida State graduate, heals well and surprises everybody and can actually be the quarterback that the Jets have already on the roster, who's basically been out all year with the injury
kind of
recuperation.
Penalty? What kind of penalty are the Jets facing if they cut Rodgers?
Oh, it's like $40-50 million cap hit, something like that.
And look for the Cowboys to trade back in the first round. Maybe, but again, you got a lot of money wrapped up in Dak Prescott. I don't know that you take another quarterback unless you can trade Prescott. I mean, if you get a good trade offer for Prescott.
Good luck with that one. What you guys need is for those movies when the mom and the dad and the daughter switch roles. You just need Jerry Jones and Phil Knight to change bodies.
When does the first portal close? I think it's December 31st, if I'm not mistaken.
The 28th is the first 28th.
One. Okay.
However, all that means is people who have not played games prior to if they've already finished their season or their bowl game was by the 23rd, that's it. Right? If you play on the 24th in a bowl game, your portal date to enter is the 29th because you get 5 days from your last game. So everybody who's in the playoffs gets 5 days from as far as they've gone, and it's all about entering the portal. It's not that you have to exit the portal by the 28th. All players, and not just CFP, Sid Irish. It doesn't matter if you're in the playoff. If you play in the Gator Bowl, which is on January 2nd, you have till January 7th. It's not just the CFP teams. There's like 4 or 5 bowls that are after New Year's that are in the window of the playoff.
5 current SEC teams appeared in the 4-team CFP era, 10 years and 17 overall. 8 of those were Bama. The balanced big also had 5 teams, 22 overall, led by Ohio State at 5. Similar misbalance. Let's be accurate here, Larry. You're including Oklahoma and Texas in those numbers. You're doing that because it bolsters your argument. If you take Texas and Oklahoma out of that, I think you're going to find that Alabama has a slightly more significant lead.
Yeah, that's disingenuous. Like, you have a good enough argument without spinning stuff and thinking that we're not going to catch it. No offense, man. And
I don't even take Oregon and Washington out of ours. Take Oregon and Washington out of ours. And
I just do the teams during the years that we're talking about. Like, now it's different. There's new teams in there. And I don't even remember. I didn't say the Big Ten was balanced. I don't know if you did, Mo, so I can't really.
No,
I don't know.
But I will. The Big Ten is extremely lopsided. It was Ohio State.
ACC wasn't balanced either for the last decade. It was all Florida State and Clemson.
So.
And the Big 12 wasn't balanced either. It was all Texas and Oklahoma.
Well, they got TCU in the one year.
Yeah, but generally, the last 10 years, the last forever years, it was Texas and Oklahoma since the time that they moved into the Big 12.
And to be fair, one of those years Ohio State went, Penn State should have went. Correction, Big 12. Big is 12 overall. Yeah, I know you included Washington and Oregon too, but I'm saying if you take out, just put the teams that were currently in the SEC and currently in the Big Ten in the 4-team playoff era, you're going to notice that Alabama's inclusion is going to be much more lopsided than if you include Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma and Texas is swaying that average for you. Antoine Code says, I wonder if the big SEC alliance will allow ASU to keep all the SEC teams they have lined up for future schedules. Maybe they keep ASU as the easy game. It's just a Big 12 school. Listen, they're in the playoffs. I don't think they think they're just a easy Big 12 school anymore. And they've been landing some players in the portal too, which.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the way I was told it, that the SEC and Big 10 basically force teams to buy out of future out-of-conference games.
Unrelated, but if you're looking for some humor, and Antoine, you probably saw it, but there was a segment on Arizona radio, it was all over Twitter, about Frank Caliendo doing an impression of John Madden talking about Scatterboo doing a run. It was excellent. It's 2 minutes of pure joy.
Jerry Jones doesn't draft quarterbacks in the first round. I thought Aikman was in the first round, wasn't he? Or was he early second?
Aikman was supplemental first round, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know he was a first round, but they also drafted Steve. Maybe it was Steve Walsh, actually. Steve Walsh was a supplemental first round pick of the Cowboys. Remember when they drafted him too? So I could be mixing those up, but granted, that was in the Jimmy Johnson days, so I can't remember after.
Thank you for letting us know that, Brasker Rascal. Anyone else miss Bama? Me neither.
I have no problem if Bama got in if they deserve to get in. Like, don't care.
Yeah, I don't think you could make the argument that Bama deserved to get in more than SMU. And I don't like SMU.
You think that Sanders is going to be able to pull a Eli Manning over on the Giants? I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, are they going to give him the same defense they gave Eli Manning?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that people think that Eli will, he maybe that Sanders goes to the Raiders. It just depends upon who the order is and who gets first pick.
Yep, here you go, Larry. SEC 3 times, 3 teams, 12 times, 8 of those were Bama, 75%. Big 3 teams, 9 times, 5 of them were OSU, little over 50%. If you do it correctly, where I think Penn State should have got in the 1 year, it would be under 50% for Ohio State. So, yeah, Alabama, you can see where the dominance was lying in the SEC with the Nick Saban era.
Ridiculous, man. Jump ahead.
If Jerry Jones offers $20 million a year, he will. I'm sure Jerry Jones can offer Deion Sanders a lot of money, but I mean, you talk about portal exodus, you're going to see Colorado's portal exodus would be gigantic. I don't know that they could get anybody in there that would be able to recover some of those recruits that he's recruited this season. Sid Irish, I'd figure OSU was up there with Bama. Yeah, they went in there 5 times. They only deserve to go in there 4. Apparently, we were supposed to act like the 4 schools are not in their new conference. They weren't in they weren't in those conferences when the 4-team CFP was happening, Larry.
You want to do a 1-year analysis?
Yeah, you can't retroactively go back there and count them. I mean,
they didn't play the same schedules. They didn't play conference things. You want to talk about 1 year? Let's talk about 1 year. We can do that, right? But Texas, you're a Texas. Like, if I'm not mistaken, you're a Texas guy. Like, did you have this 25-year passion for the SEC that you're like owning? I don't understand. They play Texas and OU and whoever played different schedules and things like that. Those teams were in those conferences at the time. Yes, you can say collectively they've gotten there, but it wasn't because of an SEC affiliation at the time. That starts this year for the new playoff and the teams that are in that conference right now. You can't count a Texas national championship from 1970 whatever in as an SEC championship. Texas can count it as part of their total and should. I really don't understand that.
Well, I mean, the argument is the 4-team playoff era. So let's just look at the teams that were in those conferences.
But they still weren't. But their path to get there is different. They didn't.
You're right.
Especially in the 14 playoff era, for the most part, the SEC had divisions, right? Everyone in that division played the same schedule. You could compare those teams a lot easier in terms of in conference. It wasn't unbalanced. Texas and the other, Big 12 schools and Big 10 was in divisions for part of that as well, right? So it's not even the same about how they got there, where it's easier to compare stuff. It's not diminishing anybody who got into the 14 playoff at the time. It's just comparing the same way. To me, it just doesn't make sense, even if you have like the specific numbers to it. At least that's my take. Everyone's entitled to
you have an
their own take on
argument
it.
there, Larry. You do have an argument there, but you can't cherry pick things to bolster the argument. If we're talking 14 playoff, Texas and Oklahoma didn't play SEC schedules the years they got in. Because they didn't play SEC schedules, they played in the Big 12, which was extremely lopsided until TCU. I think if you go back and look at Texas, Oklahoma, I think the only time there was a non-Texas, Oklahoma Big 12 team in was the year TCU went. I think it was either Texas or Oklahoma every other instance there. So, but we'll see. It's a 12-team playoff. It starts anew. We'll start keeping a scorecard. Keep chopping, a big Rutgers fan. Good to see you, keep chopping. The new Pop-Tart Bowl trophy is a work of art and pure genius. I haven't seen it yet. Have you seen it?
I have not seen the trophy yet. I know that they have 3 mascots available for toasting.
Are they going to cook a giant pastry?
I believe that they are going to do that again in some form.
Let's take a look at the new Pop-Tart Bowl. That is quite a cool trophy. All right, let me pull this up here for you guys in case anybody hasn't seen it yet. I actually like this. Let's see if I can scroll up a little bit so you can get the full effect of the Pop-Tart Bowl toaster trophy here. Now, I want to know if it's functional, if it's actually heating those pastries up, or if it's just got like a mechanism to just pop them in and pop them down.
I think it's awesome. If there's some Miami fans who just hate that to the Pop-Tarts Bowl because the name, like, no one seemed to give a crap when it was the Pool and Weed Eater versions.
Let me tell you something. Pop-Tarts are delicious.
I literally eat them like 3 times a week.
Yeah, they're delicious on the go. My favorite flavor is the chocolate brown sugar ones. That breakfast staple of chocolate and brown sugar.
Yeah, that was a part of the conversation with Cam Ward on ESPN the other day. I remember that one. If you give me frosted cherry, I'm good. Frosted strawberry is like my close second.
I will say toaster strudels are a little better. I prefer toaster strudels, but Pop-Tarts are cheap. They've got the frosting already applied. They are like ramen noodles for breakfast. They are.
And you need to have a method though. I literally cut like crust off of bread. I eat the ends off of all of them first, so they have no icing. I cut them off, so then I'm like an icing delight after that.
I would always toast mine and put them in the microwave a little bit, but then you have to cut slats in them so they cool down. You bite into one of them some bitches when it's 150,000 degrees in the center of them. It's not fun. Stormy Cyclone wants a national title pick for both you guys.
I was Oregon preseason. I'm sticking with it.
I had Ohio State playing Ole Miss in the finals. Ole Miss didn't even make the playoffs. I'll stick with Ohio State. I'm hoping Ohio State, but I think it'll probably be Oregon or Penn State.
I can't remember, but I actually think I had Oregon versus Ohio State. I know my Final Four had Texas in it, but we can pull it up for the next show. But Oregon, I know for sure, was my preseason pick all the way through.
Yeah, I'll go for Ohio State, which means they'll probably lose this weekend. So there you go. By the way, you can get tickets as low as $500 a ticket for Ohio State for Lower Bowl. If you guys want to go to the game. Or if you want to send me money to go to the game. Sorry, Rock. I hope your Pop-Tart is in the toaster in the end. Oh, they get their own Pop-Tarts, huh?
Yes, they get their individual ones, and Stormy, I think you guys have most of your team coming and playing. So, and right now, everything I know is every player that most people know from Miami. So it's good. Should be a good game. Neither team can do defense. So it's going to be a shootout. I think Miami will win because it's going to be more of a Miami crowd, but I'm sure there'll be a big Iowa State contingent there. The metric that matters is the red zone defense. As bad as Miami's defense is, it's 40th. Iowa State's like 101st. So you just but Miami gives up big ass plays on defense before you get to the red zone. So I don't think it's going to be a low scoring one for sure.
So if they get their own Pop-Tarts, what flavor? Do they get their own flavors, or is it just strawberry flavor?
Well, I think
the board.
I thought last year what they did is they put whatever the flavor was into it, and it came out like cooked, and everybody ate from there. But I think they have a choice this year of which one of the three mascots is being toasted. Whatever, there's like 3 flavors that they have an option for. And I can tell you, if Miami wins, the Cam Ward will choose which one it is. I don't know who's going to be the one who makes that decision for Iowa State if the Cyclones win.
Glenn Hanna says Pop-Tarts are trash. They're cheap. I didn't say they were gourmet by any means, but they will fill you up and they taste good.
It's not the croissant bowl, man.
Yeah, it's not the toaster strudel bowl. Tell Pillsbury to up their game a little bit. Can you imagine if they had a toaster strudel bowl, how big that packet of icing would have to be? Squeeze out on there. Get a caulk gun to put the icing on one of them bad boys. There was one year that OSU went, or several years that OSU went to the playoff. Oh, Oklahoma State. Is that what you mean, Oklahoma State? Ohio State has a Ryan Day emotional mental fragility issue. Sorry, Buckeyes. Can't beat Michigan. Same thing with Penn State. Can't beat Ohio State. It's, and this is going to bring me to the next Penn State winning a national title. Damn, I guess it's not so crazy if you think it through. They've got the easiest path. They do have the easiest path to make to the finals. They just better hope Ohio State's not waiting there for them, because James Franklin cannot beat Ohio State. Penn State can get to the title game. We'll see who they face. Good enough. All right, guys, I'm going to read 1 or 2 more comments, and we're going to wrap it up here. I'm not feeling very well. Give you a programming reminder. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., the Big Ten Mafia show. I don't know if I'm going to be there or not, but Pickles and Becky Go Huskies definitely will be. So do tune into that. They will be previewing the Big Ten matchups coming up the first round of the playoff this week. So definitely we want to tune into that. And I'm sure they'll be gloating about the Army-Navy game. Speaking of which, hello, gentlemen. Navy kicked Army's butt. America is great again. Ohio State versus Notre Dame is my pick, with the Buckeyes winning it all. That would be my favorite potential matchup ever. I would relish the chance to do that. So your take is the SEC is overrated because all of their success is Bama, when they have 4 non-Bama appearances, as does the Big. Additions of Texas and Oklahoma add historically strong, just like Oregon and Washington. Again, 75% of the appearances are Bama. A little over 50 for Ohio State. Again, you have an argument, but you're cherry picking, and you're trying to build a straw man here, and it's just not going to hold water, Larry.
I got nothing to say.
Ignoring the historical success of the full SEC is disingenuous. Why didn't you include Tulane's win over USC last year? New Year's Six Bowl, I mean, do we go back and look at what
we're talking about this year and how we're trying to fold in a conversation about this year. We're rolling in how UT and OU had an impact on the SEC over the last 10 years. Like, they're 2 different arguments. I'm kind of done.
Feel free to leave an angry comment towards this, Larry, and break the math out. It'll help us in the algorithm, and we appreciate it. We'll end it with this one. Keep chopping. Feel better, mowing. Take care, all. Yes, again, thank you. I will do my best. I've got some NyQuil honey here. I got some whiskey here. I'll mix them up and microwave it with a Pop-Tart, and we'll see if that doesn't get rid of all the COVID germs. For myself, for Rock and Rant, Rock, do you have anything you want to take us out with?
Looking forward to Friday, man. Just the playoffs kicking in, all the talk of years of hype. We finally get what most of us wanted in some form, and hope everybody enjoys them.
Should be fun. Reminder, we will be going at 6 p.m. starting this Friday. We'll be doing run a 6 to 8 so we can get out of the way for the bowl game to watch that Indiana Notre Dame game. Programming note, we have Big 10 Mafia tomorrow at 8 p.m., Big 12 Mafia Tuesday at 8 p.m., and then Bomber will have his show with FF18 Buffs on Wednesday. I think the time on that is to be determined. So I want to say thanks again for Rock and Rant, for myself. Wish you all a good week. Probably have a short week next week because of the holiday, so make sure you guys are all very, very productive at your job this week. I wouldn't want you guys to not be productive. It's not like it's a coast week, guys. So for Rock and Rant, I am out. We will see you guys next week. Peace.